Welcome to Spiritual Principles Made Practical. Once again, we're very happy to have Xandra Hawes with us, who was so great last time we wanted to do more. She is a therapist that employs psychic abilities and a Buddhist philosophy and her own intuition and wisdom to help people, and is really good at it. So from last time, there were a couple things that I wanted to dig into a little deeper. And one of them is the concept of havingness. And the other one is the idea that through understanding past lives, that helps us in this one somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And so can we start there and then see wherever that takes us?
Yeah, we can absolutely weave. I'm wondering, because our conversation on havingness used a couple different words for havingness, and I can't remember what you paralleled word wise. Do you remember what you said around like havingness or
Well, my understanding of it was a couplefold. One was willingness to accept,
yeah.
and another is like believing in myself.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Is kind of how I understood that.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, because it's like they always say is like, well, what you believe you can achieve. It's like, okay, but how do but how do I believe in myself more to
Yeah.
have confidence that I'm gonna, pull this off?
Yeah. I don't know if you have this like oh, I don't even know what to call it. There's like this spiritual growth, like itch or frustration, as like when I see people being like, oh, wow, like I might be a soul. And then there's all these people saying, like, you can do anything, right? And you can create anything and you can do it. And people are like, okay, right? And they go out there and all of a sudden something happens to them where it doesn't quite happen and they're all of a sudden there's all this doubt or if I'm doing it wrong, right? Or do I need to do it another way? Do I need another person? And it's almost like this puzzle or kind of like the human tragedy a little bit sometimes, this like dance between like going out there and trying and then like feeling like it didn't go right and then the ego pops in and tries to like make it really complex sort of in a way. And so having this can be a hard dance around like, well, how am I supposed to build up this sense of worthiness? I can have this based off of the history that I have, right? Or based off of my experiences, because it's almost trying to believe in the Easter bunny when I saw my parents walking around with bunny ears putting the eggs on the ground. It's very difficult. Right? So it's a little bit of the human tragedy, like undoing some of the experiences that we've had so that we can hold the brighter frequency of what we actually are in a way too. And I don't know if you want to share your process on it because it's a big
Well,
one on the
yeah,
spiritual.
my process is that I feel that every time that I take any action, whether it's successful or a failure, that just the fact that I acted on it increases my belief in myself. So, like, for example, I have this, as you know, this inspiration that I want to be a coach to the leaders in the world, help them realize their wholeness and have that reflected in their leadership. And I'm looking for, okay, well, how do I increase my belief in that happening to the point where it actually happens? And what I'm doing is, and my process is I say, okay, well, I just need to take the next step in the process. And so recently, the next step in the process has been sharing that more publicly, which is something that prior to now, I've always been reticent to do because I felt like, oh, well, people are going to write me off as nuts. And and so by doing what I was afraid to do before, I feel that that's increasing my belief in myself because uh, I wouldn't be able to take that action if some part of me didn't believe that it was possible,
Mhm.
and that by acting on the part of me that believes it's possible, that part becomes a larger part of my reality. And so that's my
Mm.
process. That's my sort of trial and error process. And the nicest part of doing that is that uh, I feel happy and confident when I'm doing that, even if it doesn't work.
Mm,
Right. So I've emailed like all these shows, right, that on the news, right, that all say that they present a variety of perspectives and da da da. So I periodically I'll email them as I feel inspired, saying, well, there's one perspective you're not giving voice to, which is the oldest perspective that exists, which is we're all one. And
mm,
I can present that perspective, if you'd like, and it is the most enduring of all perspectives.
mm,
And so far, I've gotten exactly zero response from having done that. But I keep doing it as I'm inspired because I feel like, okay, well, every time I'm doing that, I'm increasing my belief in myself a little bit more. And what I'm saying is absolutely true.
mhm.
Is the thought that we're all one is kind of the oldest thought that ever exists. I mean, it's endured, through all of time and then some.
Mm. I agree. I like the phrasing of that. It's the oldest belief we've got, but the most forgotten belief
Yeah,
that we have.
it's like, come on,
Um,
guys.
it almost seems like when I was going through like a lot of different like psychic development, whatever you want to call them, training programs, one in particular, always, every time, every meetup, like every workshop, they were always so much about amusement and staying amused with things. And I realized like our culture doesn't have a deep-hearted understanding of like amusement. And so when I'm picturing, right, like as you get inspired, right, like sending an email and not knowing, like I have no idea if this will be the person, that's like reading it that finally does it. But where do I stay amused in myself around maintaining my own energy field and integrity? And so doing something out of joy or inspiration or amusement in some way too feels like, when I think about like havingness, I think when you bring in amusement with havingness, right, that you're talking about, it kind of climbs that ladder one rung like at a time too. Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
but the biggest payoff for me is that when I do this, regardless of the response, I feel happy, whole, and at peace within myself,
Mhm.
more so than ever before. So that's sort of my ultimate goal anyway, right? And so I'm sort of achieving my most important goal immediately, if that makes any sense.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's a pretty strong motivator for me to, pick myself up for the 700 millionth time and try again.
Oh, I kind of hope someone discovers, like someone reads one of your emails, and maybe if the station or the news or whatever isn't in the place, someone like emails you back and it's just like, hey, we should build you an Instagram following where it's just clip videos where you're just talking about it. Maybe we'll get an eye out of leaders and things like that that are miserable and are like, what is this? I'm leading. I'm trying to make this work, like what's happening? And they're looking for support but can't figure out what that looks like. It's hard. Even this morning, I have like my ballot has been sitting on the counter in the kitchen and it's due tomorrow. And I sat there and I sat down and I don't know anything about the candidates. I didn't look anything up. And I just sat there and I closed my eyes and I said each person's name and I sent them a soul hello and said like, how aware of are you of like the spiritual nature of the world and what's to come and how to make it a better place. And I voted based off of the percentage of 0 to 100. How aware are you of this? And then
Good.
I
I love
dropped it
that.
off this morning.
I love that. I think that is inspired. That is genius.
Other people might think it's dumb, but I was like, I don't know if there's a way out unless you realize, unless we're making policies based off of this like higher truth, right? Or this law or this knowing. So whether believe in this green thing or you believe in that thing, like how aware are you of the things? And that's how I'm gonna vote. So I'm on your team with this, like in the simple sort of
Well,
ways.
here's what's really weird, right? And yes and no is that there isn't a person that I've shared any of this with that doesn't say, "Yeah, I'm with you."
Mhm.
And
Fair.
it's like, well, wait a minute. I mean, so, but one of the things that I've realized is that the more I'm in a vibration of acceptance, the more I resonate acceptance in other people, and the more direct the contact is, the higher the resonance. And
Mm-hmm.
so if people are, I've always said, I do my best in person, and second best, video, and third email, and fourth text, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so that's the only thing that I can come up with to make any sense out of the fact that everybody I speak to agrees with me, but everybody that I contact with, through email or something, ignores me.
Ah, I'm
But
so on a other field, I wonder, because you're right, there's so much with technology that people, even good things coming in, we all burn out on it in some way. And so I wonder like what the next aspect is, because email is almost becoming like overwhelming to
yeah, it's
people.
like
It's
spam. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, right. Even when people write nice things or sweet things, it's like hard for people to take in. So I kind of wonder like if we're all going to have these like circular hologram things on the ground, and people will have like hologram numbers where you can do a video and send it and that person appears and you get to like have an experience of them in some way, in like a better way, or like I don't know what's next, but right, like there's going to be something bigger because it's not letting people find other people, and that's what it's supposed to be about. So someone's going to keep trying to use technology to make it more authentic
Right.
in a way, and so maybe you'd shine on the hologram basis.
What's coming up to me as we discuss this are two things. One is, when you said before about, when I was talking about getting called, um, to ask my question in a large crowd,
Hmm.
that there was like some kind of resonance that reached people,
Hmm.
and that had that happen. And the other thing that comes to mind is that after I met my wife and after we were married, she told me that before she came to Los Angeles area, that she went to a psychic and said that she was going to marry a Jewish guy with black hair, which I had then. That was 38 years ago. Uh,
Oh.
and she was going to marry from either Pacific Palisades or Santa Monica. And her response was, I'm going through a divorce, I'm not interested. And lo and behold, guess what? Right. So there was enough of a spiritual resonance and connection that my desire to find somebody that I really wanted to marry, and whatever her needs and desires were, linked up in the ethers in a way that connected us.
Hmm.
And so what I'm thinking, and I'm thinking about um, how much I wanted that to happen, and how committed I was to making that happen somehow in my life. And I'm thinking that maybe, the similar thing might happen with, um, getting an audience to be able to talk to, about the fact that we're all one. And because we're all one, there's a win-win solution to every problem. That's a
Hmm.
that's a necessary and obvious, or to me, obvious part of the fact that we're all one. And it
Hmm.
makes it more palatable and easier for people to relate to and understand and act on
Hmm.
than just being one. Because
Yeah.
people can understand more and more about win-win and
Mm.
relate to it better. So those are the couple things that come to mind is that, well, you know what, maybe if I keep trying, that psychic energy, for lack of a better word, will open doors for that like it did for meeting my wife or getting called on a meeting.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, something important that I feel like you're bringing up in that is like you can be doing a lot of things really perfectly. You can be radiating such high frequencies, but you can't. I believe in free will, and so there's waiting for the other people to be ready too, right? So you're radiating this energy, and you're like just waiting for your wife to be ready, right? You're
Well,
like working on it.
I guess there's part of me that subscribes to that and part of me that doesn't.
Oh,
And
okay.
and the part of me that doesn't says is that I have seen people give up all kinds of historical beliefs that they were committed to in the experience of enough love, and enough light and enough caring and stuff. And I've seen people just, including me, walk away from long held perspectives.
Mhm.
It's like for enough love, we'll ditch anything.
Mm.
Is kind of my thought about that, and that uh, in my meditation, one of the things that I've gotten is that whatever contribution I make in the world is going to be made by me being an example. And so by me, if I want other people to relate to, identify, and act on the fact that we're all one, I need to embody that more,
Mhm.
and all of the love that comes as part and parcel of that. And so to that extent, I feel like as I learn and grow and you know heal through acceptance all of my limiting beliefs and patterns and all that stuff, that my light will shine brighter and my acceptance of truth will radiate further, and it will resonate that same light and truth in other people more powerfully and effectively.
Mhm. Mhm.
So in that respect, I feel like I'm at cause, and that the reason that um, I haven't become commercial yet is a indicator of the fact that I haven't really accepted it within myself enough. And that kind of goes back to the having, like what we were
Mhm.
talking about.
Mhm. Mhm. I don't know if this is like when I don't disagree with anything you're saying because I can feel the resonance of it. I think when I was thinking about like people being ready, like I have so many folks, half the people that come for psychic readings are like trying to figure out, do they stay in relationships? Do they leave? Right? All these like I've been telling folks recently like that are looking for relationships. I'm like, don't worry. There's so many people being released to the wild, aka divorce. Like your person's they're getting released. Like they'll be there. But you know, like
Right.
half the psychic readings, I'll look at what people are doing and they're rocking these like beautiful frequencies, this self-awareness, all this stuff, and they really want, this like deep partnership. And they'll be like, what am I doing? Do I need to do more? And I'll look and I'll be like, you have a really beautiful order. It's almost like you went to the restaurant and you didn't order anything on the menu and you completely, added this, changed that, and it's coming, but it's going to take, a lot of different variables in the back in the kitchen that are not easily accessible to come together. And part of that is the other person's manifestation, and part of it's that person being released or like, working through other things. So I guess that's how I sort of think about it sometimes, is I rarely see people's orders not coming. It just depends on what they're needing to release. And also, like you're saying, the havingness for that frequency has a lot to do it too. So if you're having a high havingness, it sounds like wife changed pretty quickly. She had a high havingness when she met you, right? She wasn't interested, and then like, oh, okay, here it is. And she could match that frequency. Right.
Right.
So it's true
And
in
it,
that
and it, and it
energy.
makes sense in the sense that, I mean, she had to come to California, I mean, I met her
Right.
within 24 hours of when she actually made it to Los Angeles.
Oh wow. Yeah. 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 Quick one. Mm-hmm.
So as soon as we got to Los Angeles, it was like, boom, wow, man, my life just changed.
Oh, that's sweet. That's really, really sweet. I love that she's, wait, how many years ago did you say was that?
That was 38 years ago.
Man, that's cool. I love like it's more normal now to like get psychic readings and stuff, but even, almost 40 years ago, getting a psychic reading was still kind of, a little bit more underground. So I love that she was already open to the woo in that way,
Well,
I
she
guess.
was
Like
already
instead of,
seeing ghosts and talking to angels, and
ah, okay,
yeah, no,
okay.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
she was already very. I mean, that was one of the things that was so great about her is was that her
Ah,
mysticism. But
that's great.
so
Yeah. Okay. So that was already in her wheelhouse. This wasn't
uh,
like, oh God, I need to find someone off the grid here. She was like, I need to find my people to learn more about
yeah,
this. Okay. Okay.
so
Okay.
yeah, so we met in a spiritually oriented program,
Cool.
because that was the common thread,
Very cool. Okay.
which we
Okay.
both immediately dropped out of because we found each other.
Ah, that's so funny. My husband and I had the same thing. Literally, we were sitting in like a spiritual event thing, and maybe I told you this too, but I like didn't want to go at all. Oh my God. I didn't want to go to this event listening to someone talk for 16 hours, like my spiritual teacher, but I was like, I cannot listen to anyone talk for 16 hours. And like, there he was in the back row with his shoes off, meditating. And I was like, there he is. Ta-da! So yeah, I feel you on
Yeah.
the spiritual gathering front. It's really, really nice when you can find that easily in a partner too. And you're a rarity too. There's not as many. A lot of the people I do readings for are women, and they're like, "Where's my like spiritual man that wants to meditate? Like, where is he?" And I'm like, "They're a little bit harder to find. They're like the rare fish right now. Not eventually, but they're a little bit harder to find right now." But that's a whole other topic about spirituality and men's circles and creating more space for men's spirituality too. So, anyways,
Well, and that's, that's another example I want to be is like that, you know what, it's not effeminate to show your emotions. It's not effeminate to admit that you're not perfect, that you're still learning.
mhm.
It's just honest,
Yeah, yeah, that's so rare. It's so, so
But you
rare.
get further, right? I mean, there's this line that I heard on a Brian Tracy. I love Brian Tracy. He synthesizes all kinds of stuff. But one of the lines that I heard on one of his tapes is that the average person can sense insincerity from across a crowded room, and I just feel like everybody can tell how authentic you are,
Mm, mhm.
and that's a lot more valuable than uh, trying to present ourselves as perfect, which
Yeah.
we all kind of know isn't really so.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Well, if I ask, have you, so you have, I love using the word wooey. It's an endearing term. So just know I use it sometimes. But with you and your wife both having this sort of consciousness or this kind of wooey energy, what has been your experiences? Like, do you have a past life together in terms? Do you
Oh
have
yeah,
history?
no, I mean,
Yeah, lots of them.
I'm not big on like I'm not a visual person, right? But
Ah.
and I'm not a hugely past life person. But with her, oh God, did I remember being in a past life, and kind of only I could be with her, only I could be with her.
Oh, like the longing. Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, oh yeah.
Oh, no wonder you came out of the gates this time. You're like, I'm gonna find her. I'm gonna put my lighthouse out here. We're not losing track of her this
Well,
time.
I didn't have that experience until after I met her and everything.
Ah, okay. Okay.
But,
Okay.
yeah, it was like yeah. And she'll go to, I mean, and she said about when, yeah, and she's even stronger at all this psychic stuff than I am. She was in England one time before I met her, and she was touring an estate, and she said, "Oh my God, what happened to my rose gardens?" Yeah. Remembering from a past life.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm like, that's amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing. But oh man.
So,
Well, should we what I'm curious about what we should talk about in terms of past lives, because you mentioned like interweaving them with havingness,
right.
and they
Well, one of the
definitely
things that
do.
you said that really caught my attention and stuff was that you said that I had done some type of large scale leadership in a past life, and so that in some ways this wasn't new to me. And
Mhm,
when you said that, I felt like my belief in my capacity to do that in this lifetime got a little bit stronger. And
mhm.
and so I wanted to kind of dig into that to see I don't know, just expand on that somehow,
Yeah, yeah,
because um, I'm I'm interested in pursuing anything that will help me believe in myself a little bit more.
yeah, 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 yeah. Well, what's interesting is most people, and maybe your wife, I mean, she probably has her own version of this too, but it's like a lot of times most people have certain levels of clairsentience, right? Or the ability to kind of sense and feel into things. A lot of people use their feelings to kind of gauge what feels right or that intuitive click in a
Right.
way. And so I think a lot of people, without even realizing it, tap into different past life feelings, right? Like different things that they like, things they're curious about, things that just they're like, I don't know. I'm scared of this for some reason, right? Or I just know this person well. And I'm sure you have this experience too.
Oh
And
yeah,
so
no, I mean I've run into lots of people that we sort of flash on a past life, together.
yeah, yeah. And if you think about it, right? Sometimes it is so fascinating in my brain. Like, if you just how many people in this life you've caught eyes with or shaken hands with or met in random ways, right? Just how many people you even had a 2-minute conversation with. And then how many people do you think on a daily basis we run into that could be from a past life? Like literally could be if you've had 10 or 20. I don't even know how many thousands of people we talk to in this life, how many just putting gas in your car, right? Or like walking your dog. How many people as we travel we could bump into that we already sort of have come across before? It kind of goes with your all one energy a little bit, but really when people start opening their fields to the question of how many people will I come in contact with today that maybe I already know on an energetic level or on a different level, you start having sort of this quantum energy start moving a little bit. People
Okay.
become less and less scary. Strangers become less and less scary, right? In a way. And again, there's that holding that all one energy, but and if you want to start meeting people that you've had, a lot of people will be like, oh, I want to meet my soul family, or I want to meet family that go beyond maybe my lineage that I've known before. And so there seems to be kind of a button to like opening up those things. And the reason I bring it up is that seeing that you have lives where there's been a lot of leadership and a lot of growth and understanding of systems, there's probably people that have helped you along those ways too. And how cool would it be on your mission to discover some of those people that have also been with you to help with this too? So I'm bringing that in here because it seems like a lot of the time, like you're running a lot of big energies. And I'm like, ooh, like, what would it be like to have people with you that have been working with you in different ways? And maybe that's, I don't know how you feel as I'm putting it out there,
No,
how
I
you
mean, that
sense
would
it in
be
your head.
awesome. I would be so happy for that, I mean, you know, I have, a couple of fans, that are helpful, but it would be, but I'm definitely open to, meeting more people with, more the merrier.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we kind of put it out there, like as
Yeah,
you're going on your
yeah,
mission,
yeah.
you
No,
are
I'm
definitely
gonna be open for that. Yeah.
okay, great. So Scott's open universe.
Oh, here I
If you
am.
think you've known Scott in a previous life and have helped him with this mission or believe in this mission, you should reach out. You should reach out and just connect.
Absolutely.
But I mean, so I guess a lot of times, if I explain how, would it be helpful to explain how past lives get read from over
Yes.
here so people
Yeah.
can kind of imagine it? Okay. Because
Would. Yeah.
a lot of people have this ability, but it gets really caught up with ego really fast. So it shuts down really hard in most people. Like there's kind of a six chakra meltdown that happens for most people when they're learning it. And even when I was doing psychic readings, I was so sensitive that I had to learn how to like almost like a muscle, like going to the gym. A lot of people think like if you're psychic or you do readings, you're just like, the sixth sense level, like starting. And I shut that down really, really early as a kid for safety. A lot of us do, right? And then like really had to learn different ways to open it up. But so, oh, maybe we should play here for a second. Yeah, let's play here for a second. I'm gonna have you do something. It's kind of
Okay.
an activity so you can feel into this. So I'm gonna have my eyes closed and you can close yours. You can look at the ground. If you're listening to this as well, please don't do this if you're driving, but if you're hanging out and listening, feel free to close your eyes as well for a second. But all you're gonna do with your eyes closed or kind of just eyes kind of slightly closed and blurred, I'm just gonna have you imagine a kitten. Just simple kitten. Pick a color that's your favorite. Maybe it looks just like your cat or someone else's cat.
Okay.
And then what you're going to do is you're going to have that kitten start playing with a ball of yarn. So again, pick a ball of yarn, have it start playing. Maybe it runs around, maybe it's rolling around.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And so I'm going to have you open your eyes. So where were you viewing that?
At
Was it
home.
easy? I was at home. So you pictured like your house, like in a room.
Yeah.
So was there furniture around? Did it look like your house? Okay. Yeah. 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 So if we ask a deeper question, where do you think in your mind you were viewing that?
Oh, my imagination. I mean, I'm not sure how to answer
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, exactly. So this is really simple. Your imagination and your spiritual reading screen, they use the same space. They use the exact same space. So, like, the right brain is where a lot of, they've said scientifically, consciousness, a lot of the waves come out of when we're doing consciousness or higher frequency work. But when you're doing psychic readings, you are visualizing a room like you were doing, right? And your brain will fill in like what's around the room. Some people imagine a screen. Some people, there'll be nothing behind the cat. They'll be like, I have no idea. It was just kind of gray or white. And so when you're starting to do psychic readings, what you do is you work on that space. So you use visualizations and you start clearing out that space. And so the first thing that you start doing is, instead of having anything else in that room, you start clearing out the furniture. You clear out the furniture. You can even imagine like a projector screen. Some people love like the room to kind of visualize things, and some people it's more of a screen. So that's the first thing you work on, is you imagine things, but you start clearing them out. And so you start doing energy work to just clear out that space, because naturally, right, your ego will start creating things that are familiar to you, things you're afraid of, things you're inspired, right? Did you have a couch in the background, a chair? Did you got your carpet?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's just going to fill in things that it knows that it's comfortable with, right? So, whenever I'm doing a psychic reading and whenever you're trying to get psychic energy in your head, you want to go to that imaginary space, because it's just like if you imagine your TV at home, if you watch the news, or if you watch, a cartoon, or if you watch a movie, they're all on the same thing, but they're completely different frequencies. And so that's the hard part for people, is they'll say, how do I know if it's real or if I'm making it up? And that's the hard part, is that it uses the same space. So then people don't understand basically how to use that space. We're not taught how to do it. So it's kind of the first lesson of like psychic information. That's where some of that visualization. But you were saying, I don't see things. You could see the cat, right? You could see the ball of
Yeah, I
yarn.
mean, I've gotten better, but some people are just amazingly visual,
Yeah.
and, and I'm much more kinesthetic,
Yeah.
feeling than I am anything else, really.
Yeah. 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 Right. So it's true.
That,
Some people,
that and thought, yeah.
yeah, some people it's more of a hologram. It's more dreamlike too. Like it's happening, but it's not necessarily where you could zoom in and like see an individual piece of fur, right? Kind of a thing too. And that's okay. That's okay too. So when I'm ever doing a psychic reading, I'm picturing this big sort of white screen, or sometimes it'll be a room, but for the most part, it's a screen. And then what I do if I'm doing a past life reading on someone is I use the symbol of a rose, because I love being able to read people, but getting out of the way of the ego. Because if I imagine you on my screen, all of a sudden my ego is going to start looking at things and trying to find answers immediately, right? But it doesn't really know what to do with a rose. It just goes, it's a rose, right?
Right.
It might be like, oh, that's pretty, or oh, that's whatever. So when I'm doing a past life reading, basically I put a rose as a symbol, and then I have that person say their full name 3 times, and that rose fills in. And I don't even know, out of the thousands of readings I've done, I've never seen a rose that's the same, because that rose gets filled with that person's energy and their essence. And all of a sudden it starts transforming. And depending on how they're doing in present time, that rose will look a certain way. So if someone's going through something, it might be really closed up. It might have a lot going on. All of a sudden, different guides will come in and they'll start even explaining your rose almost like a pie chart. They'll be like, oh, this is this over here. This is this part over here. There might be certain petals. So you learn the symbolism of how healthy that rose looks, and all of a sudden, information comes through. And so then for a past life, you look at the stem of the rose, because how long the stem is how old as a soul, how many lives that person has had. And there's thorns down on the rose that show where those trauma kind of responses are in those lives. And then what happens is, on that stem, I will say to your spirit, hey, based off of what you're asking or what you're learning, can you show us a past life to help us understand this energy more? and all of a sudden a gold ring will appear on the stem. And I zoom into it and it cracks open onto my screen and it turns into a movie. And all of a sudden,
Mm.
yeah, yeah. So then it starts moving, and sometimes it almost looks like for me it's like a VHS. Like I gotta like rewind back or go forward. It'll show me different pictures, things
Yeah.
like that. Sometimes I can walk into it and kind of have you walk around with me and say like, okay, who is this or who is that? And I'll be like, okay, you're working on this. Show me 20 years from now. What does your life look like then? And so it's getting really good at asking questions because I teach people how to do readings and things, and everyone will be like, I don't know. I don't know. I'm like, okay, well, did you ask it in a different way? Do you ask a question? They're like, oh, I have all this pressure that I'm just supposed to understand exactly what's happening in front of me. And so, a big thing about doing psychic work is learning how to ask really good questions that kind of like bounce out the ego. So, I tell you all of this because I'm going to look kind of at the psychic energy that you're talking about, but you can even visualize it with me and I'll walk through it and be like, okay, I'm looking at this
Oh,
now.
that'd be
Okay,
awesome.
this is here.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
get to kind of like use your imagination with it because the imagination is so close to spiritual energy because you can create out of imagination too.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Any curiosities, any questions? Now you get to kind of visualize it
Well, I'm
because
just
everyone's
anxious to
got their
find
own
out. Let's
way.
do this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. All right. So I'm going to bring in my guides quick a little bit here. Oh, that's fascinating. Okay. Huh. There's a guide, almost like has this big red auric field, and it just kind of ran past my psychic space and it said, I'm getting ready. And I'm like, oh, okay, great. Don't know if that's one of your helpers or mine for this. Let's see here. Just calling in the four angels that I work with. And I work with Archangel Gabriel, Archangel Michael, Archangel Uriel, and Archangel Raphael. And so I just call them in from the four directions to kind of surround the space because then it creates a really high frequency energy healing. Okay, and so I'm going to say our reading prayer here, and I just do that so it really holds the space more. With abundant love and open hearts, we ask that this past life reading be in alignment with our highest selves. We call in your guides and other high frequency beings to be here with you, to send love into your heart, and to remind you that you are a bright, empowered soul. May this reading guide you back to your divine inner knowing and help you connect in deeply with your unique root medicine. May it be so. All right. Oh, this is going to be a fun one. Okay. So again, I've got my white reading screen. I clear it out and I make sure that space is set to neutrality. So that way the ego can't come in and try to project too much. I'm just receiving information versus digging or finding. So I set that space at neutrality. There we go. All right. So I'm going to have you say your full name 3 times, please, and we'll go from there.
Scott Friedman, Scott Friedman, Scott Friedman.
Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. Okay. So I say it's fascinating because it's sometimes people's energies as they're coming through, there'll be like these messages that just start popping through. And there might be a lot of changes coming, good ones, big ones. Um, I think what's happening, if I could describe your rose, is that there's a really almost like an oceanic blue coming through. There's like 2 different tones of blue. There's like a light, again, like almost like a Caribbean blue, and then there's a darker one, almost when you're like on a cruise ship in the middle of the ocean, and there's kind of more of that icy blue. And right in the center of the rose, there's this almost like pastel green color that's happening. Ah, and even inside of that, there's yellow. That's so funny. So you got different layers going on. And so the inside of the rose says a lot about that person working with their core essence. Again, sort of the middle of the rose, where a lot of that energy comes from, where we're sort of like harnessing that essence of ourselves and protecting it. So there's a yellow and a green in there. And so whenever I see yellows and greens, the yellow is a pretty high frequency to run. A lot of times when I'm teaching people how to run certain energies, yellow is very difficult for some people. It can make people anxious or give them a headache sometimes. But for my people that are working on big spiritual revolutionary things, yellow actually feels like a home because there's such bright and warmth, and it moves really fast energetically. So there's a lot about reclaiming in the middle of this. There's a lot about like this path of just reclaiming who you are, remembering, reclaiming. And part of the green around that is working through understanding how to do that. And so there's this dance between the conceptual, between like learning how to do that and also completely letting all the rules go about how to do that simultaneously. So there's this freedom dance that you do about trying to understand it or working hard and also just letting it be so that it can come through. So it's something that you're constantly working on that I can see in the rose again. And then the blue around the outside, yeah, some of it is working with right action and working with truth and also mixing in discipline. So there's a spiritual energy of how to stay disciplined in a world that is very supportive of people not staying disciplined um, in their own knowing. So there's a process or there's a ritual that sort of you are developing about staying really close to yourself. And there's also old layers. The blue has a lot to do with healing in different ways, but it also has to do with mastery. And so a lot of times when I see blue in someone's space, there's this crux point between the reclaiming, the healing, the holding the frequency. A lot of it is how do I maintain and hold this frequency, and how do I do it in a spiritually disciplined way, and not getting too caught up on like how the world is telling me how to do it. You have a very unique way about doing this and going through it, and it's working for you, and it's going to continue to work for you. And your spiritedness is a very good testament to practicing putting yourself out there, because there's that little part that's like, oh, I don't want to do that. But there's also this radiant part that's like, why not? We have nothing to lose. So there's a really cool balance there of working on that. And so if you can kind of visualize that rose as I work my way down on the stem, right away, right at the bottom of the rose, there's a big thorn. And that thorn, I think, is a lineage. Whoopsies. That one is a little bit of a lineage thorn. And so there might have been through in this particular life a lot of having to protect. There might be something in your family system about having to protect or having to make sure that people, it almost looks like we have to watch out for ourselves, or like we have to like protect people and make sure they're okay. So I don't know if there's been a lot in your system of people being unkind, or even certain family members like struggling to feel like accepted in some sort of way, but there's a big thorn right at the top. And so if I work my way down and I'm looking at your stem, what's really cool, and this gets really galactic, I guess, in a way, is that people's stems, yours is very long, of course, and but the funny part is on this really long stem, like 2/3 of the way down, there's a part of the stem that it's almost like a purple. It's almost like a see-through color, almost like a translucent color. And so whenever I see that, that's usually someone's experiences that have been happening off planet. So I'm a big believer and a big, from the past lives basically I've done, I've realized that there's a lot more societies out there besides Earth. There's a lot of places that people choose to incarnate to really learn different spiritual lessons and to bring a lot of wisdom of different civilizations here in order to help Earth evolve. Because from what I've seen in past lives, there's a lot of civilizations that are very far ahead on a conscious level. And so some people will actually choose to incarnate in these different societies, really understand, learn how things are done, and then they will actually come to the earth plane and try to bring those things. And so even like when you look at like Nikola Tesla or some of these like inventors and things like that, they didn't come up with these things like in a group of people. They were like walking down the sidewalk or eating breakfast, and all of a sudden this like download comes in. So I tend to be a proponent of like some of the big people with big ideas have brought them in from different lives or channeled them from elsewhere. So anyway, as I'm looking at your stem, there's a big chunk of energy that's in that kind of purple sector about having lived elsewhere, and it's part of your mission a little bit too. I think part of the reason that you're aware of what's possible on Earth and you can see it so clearly is because what you're seeing actually makes a lot of sense elsewhere. It's actually principles or ways that other societies already live. And so there's a really important role taking a lot of different lives a long time ago did, because each time, let me check your stem here. Yeah. Oh, wow. That's fascinating. So if we imagine, we were looking at a book of your life and each life was a chapter, there's a lot of chapters, but a lot of them, some of them have grief in them about trying to understand humanity and why we hurt each other. There's a few lives of grief of just like being so confused, like being born in certain times where you were born in countries that were really struggling with war, and you're sort of the person where people are like talking about what we need to do to like win, and you're like, I don't know what this means. Like, this doesn't make sense to me. And there's one particular life, I think, where you actually had to take a side in battle, and you really struggled to hurt people, like when they give you a sword and a helmet and they're like, go ahead and go do this. Like it literally, there's like a core wounding of like being made to hurt people when you've always known it's never been right. And so I want to kind of send some energy healing to whatever life that was where you felt guilt or grief for kind of picking up a sword and hurting people, or feeling like you just had to do it to make the family proud. There's like a certain energy of like, in order to be accepted in that life, in that system, you had to go along what people said. But there has always been this sense of truth telling. And I think one of the reasons why this life, this blue in your rose, particularly around being seen and letting yourself be seen and saying these things, is because these are things you've known a lot in different lives. And so you've taken different positions, sometimes just more like wholesome positions where you're living in like a small community or village and you're trying to, on a political level, trying to like give your 2 cents about how things could be run. And then there have been other lives where you've chosen big powerful things, like more of the king sort of energy, or even more of like, excuse me, trying to lead women in sort of this feminine way of staying connected to earth. There's been different lives of doing that, and one of them in particular, even like the rulership life, like a big one I can see, it's almost like you've got your head in your hands, there's like you holding on to like your forehead, and there's this like, how are we going to do this? How am I going to get people to see and understand? It's like holding a really high vision and being at the top where you get to make those decisions, but you know that if you make the decision, people are going to start rallying against you because they can't have, there's the havingness, they can't have that perspective yet, or they can't hold the wider perspective. And so it's been hard for you sometimes to hold in powerful positions, being strategic, and also being aware of this interconnectedness and this consciousness. You've always understood that by hurting someone else, like karma exists. And so it's been very difficult in a lot of lives. And the ones that you've chose to hurt people have been like I said, kind of achy on that front. And so this is a really cool mission that you have, right? So like starting off early as a soul, you started taking lives elsewhere to sort of understand some of these systemic principles. So spent a lot of lives there, and we're like, okay, how do I come back at these different time periods in Earth and try to figure out how to build community? Has been tricky around your belief systems, depending on when you've incarnated and the belief system and the frequency. There's been other ones that have actually worked out really well. You've been able to do well in smaller communities, more tribal communities. I can even see one that's more like more island sort of base, where it's more an earth-centered community of like building, negotiating, understanding building like systems of evolution for people, like rites of passage, like as they get older and the information that they need. So this is not your first rodeo as a soul working on this level and trying to do it. This is just one of the lives where you get to be very open and loving. But it also asks a lot of you. It asks you to be very vulnerable. It asks you to be very open in this particular one. And you don't have to hide in a way, but this is the one where um, because of our technology world, there's a lot about being crazy or being seen in a certain way because you can be painted a certain way and you can't be executed for it anymore, but you can be shunned or you can feel that kind of more psychic energy. And so that's the task in this one of how do you stay open, connecting with people, sharing all of this knowledge that is very old in a lot of ways and very ancient, and also really call in your team. That's a big one here. It's important not only to carry the lighthouse that you have, but really, really letting yourself know that you're supported and knowing that you are building a team here more, but being able to ask for that a little bit more is important so people can share that energy, because there are people that are getting really fed up of what's going on, but they don't really know there's anything else. They don't really know there's an alternative. So a lot of people are going unconscious and they're with you, but they don't know how to hold their light as brightly as a group yet. And so that's a big task. Is it's almost like you're at a concert and someone like turns their cell phone light on, and all of a sudden if everyone turns their cell phone light on, it lights up the whole room. You're trying to hold your cell phone up and like kind of shining it around, and a few people have got theirs on, but we're waiting for people to kind of like look up and kind of turn on some of these abilities that are already there. So you've got a really cool mission, and I know that I've said a lot when I go into the readings. It's like there's a lot that rolls. So I'm gonna open my eyes and check in with you on this to see if you've got certain questions here, but that's what's coming through so far with things.
I mean, I just related a lot to everything. Uh, I mean, certainly, certainly, I've had the question of what am I doing here?
Ah, yeah, yeah. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
know, and did I come to the wrong planet? I know
Mm.
I've had those thoughts.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I mean, it does help to sort of have that perspective a little bit more, and it's I don't know, I just find it all um, encouraging and validating.
Mhm.
I mean, it's so I feel less alone in what I'm doing when I'm able to have something like this happen.
Mm.
And it's like, guys, we're all in this together. It's just me,
Yes.
it's everybody.
Yeah, yeah. That message is has been with you a long time.
Yeah.
There's a really deep awareness of like a basic level, like we're all in this together, like we can do this together, like that's very normal for you, but it's because you got, from what I can tell, teachings really early. So that has been a heart mission, that has been a part of your core soul upbringing for a long time. And so when people choose to do the opposite of that, there's almost like I don't, like what? Why though? Like it almost doesn't make sense. You're like, I don't know why people would choose this in a way. And so the mission for you has been like, okay, rather than judging, how do I love? How do I love? How do I bring more love
Yeah.
into this
I've done
situation?
that a lot. I mean, I understand. I mean, I look at people that behave badly and try to understand, and I do understand, I mean, it's like everybody's trying to maximize their experience of love, joy, and peace in any way they can. And a lot of people have some pretty um, ineffectual approaches to that,
Mm, mm-hmm.
but they're still trying for the same end. They're just going about it in a way that doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
They're like, taking more drugs isn't going to get you there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
It's important. There are going to be more people. Maybe Maybe we need to call in more people that have got the same. Ooh, crow just flew past. Oh, and another one. Good. They're good signs for me, but maybe more of the off-planet energy or some of the beings, if you believe in sort of other civilizations, and maybe it's time to gather some of those people that know at their core those principles and have been brought up with those, and so it doesn't you don't have to work so hard, right? Being in community that are people that have already rooted that in. And it seems like you've got good people around you. We just need people that want to carry through a little bit more of the mission, I think, to
I
get it
mean,
to
I
other
mean, that's the
people.
part that just like what I said before really baffles me is everybody I talk to goes, yeah, 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 yeah. You know,
Yeah.
everybody I talk to in person goes,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then it's like, and then it like stops at that boundary, it seems.
Yeah. Well, I always wonder, like people when they're in, right, and maybe you have this experience when people are like in your energy field and you're exchanging at that high frequency, people can maintain it, right? And then they go home, they have to vacuum, their kids like upset, right? The
Oh yeah,
dog maybe threw up, and then all of a sudden it's just like boom, boom. And then they have to go to work, and then there's this frequency of like, how do I even get through my day, right?
right.
How do I even do it? I feel like our earth is designed, or not our earth, but like our communities have been designed for people to be stressed out and to unplug from all those things. And so I wonder what needs to happen as a society about us operating differently in order to maintain the frequencies you're talking about. Because you'd be hard pressed to find most people that wouldn't agree with you, but it's holding that frequency and carrying out a mission based off of that individually and collectively that seems tricky.
And well, I've shared a lot about the role meditation has played in my life, and I've had more than one person come and ask me, like, how do I get started meditating? And
Mhm,
I steer them in the right direction. I don't want to teach that, but I can put them in touch with people who teach that.
mhm, mhm,
And so, I mean, that's, and meditation has been growing in popularity in our society, which is a really good thing. And so
mhm,
I think that that's the one thing that comes to my mind about um, what we can relate to and do to try to stay at a higher vibration throughout the day.
mhm, mhm,
Like for
mhm,
what I'm doing now is I'm keeping track of like, okay, how many times during the day do I resonate with the really high vibration and how many times during the day do I resonate with the lower vibration and just kind of keep score and see how I'm doing.
mhm, mhm. I think it's a good idea about kind of keeping tallies. Like, can you imagine if all of us were just 25% of the day rocking high vibration? I mean, our whole world would, just 25%. That's not even an F.
I know, yeah, yeah. Right you are, right you are. And so yeah, it's interesting. But the thing that gives me solace is that um, I don't have to get outer cooperation to maximize what's good in my life. I just need to, I can internally, by accepting who and what I am, that I can achieve all the best that's available to me without giving control to people outside of myself.
True.
And that's kind of where my focus is. But also to be whole, the vibration that I have has to sort of permeate all my perspectives, right? So I have to be able to
Mm,
be willing to be public about uh, where I'm at and what I'm doing as a means of completing my acceptance of it.
mhm, mhm, mhm.
And so, and you've been a big part of helping that, which is excellent.
Woohoo. Yes, yes.
So yeah,
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, I wish I had more time too.
yeah.
I've got another meeting in about 15
I
minutes.
know, and I appreciate you. Just real quick, tell people how they can get in touch with you if they are
Oh,
so
yeah.
inclined.
Yes, all on my website, solescencepsychotherapy.com.
Well, great.
Mhm.
Well, thank you so much, and it has been just great.
Thank you, Scott slash Steve.
Oh my. Okay, now I need to figure out how to end the recording. Um, Stop recording. There it is.